I'm in Legoland, New York. The first Legoland in the US opened in 1995 in California. But did you know that the first Legoland almost opened in Epcot in Walt Disney World?
That's right, live action me. Disney at one point planned to add a sort of mini Legoland to the World Showcase in Epcot through a Denmark pavilion. Before we begin constructing this video, you can help us build up the channel by hitting the subscribe button. With that down, let's begin. Initially considered for Phase 2 of Epcot's World Showcase construction, Denmark would have been located where Norway ultimately landed today. The pavilion would have been inspired by Danish architecture, primarily Tivoli Gardens, which actually inspired the creation of Disneyland. The coolest thing about the pavilion was its sponsor, Lego. Yep, Disney was planning to offer one of the most effective forms of edutainment, teaching the history of Denmark through the greatest toy ever designed. For those who didn't know, LEGO originated in Denmark and has become one of the most iconic and widespread global brands coming out of the country. So what would the pavilion offer? Let's ask live action me again.
Miniland is in every Legoland park, and it features small miniature models of different locations and icons around the world. The Denmark Pavilion was originally going to have a boat ride that would take you around an outdoor scenery of different Miniland attractions.
The boat ride would be the signature attraction, reminiscent of the Storybook Land's canal boats in Disneyland, but showcasing miniature LEGO models around the river instead. Allegedly, the pavilion would also have a few basic amusement park rides to fit the Tivoli Gardens theme, such as a carousel and a Ferris wheel. That sounds like a pretty solid pavilion, right? So what went wrong? Honestly, we don't know the details and we likely never will. But the simple answer is that LEGO pulled out as a sponsor and Disney found different sponsors from Norway to create the Norway Pavilion in its place. Fun fact, there's actually a small piece of the Denmark Pavilion still in Epcot to this day. The bathrooms just at the end of the Norway Pavilion were originally created for Denmark and featured Danish architecture with sod rooftops. The architecture is similar enough to Norwegian architecture that most guests will never notice. But now, all of you know. For the rest of this video, I want to imagine how different Epcot would be if it did have a Denmark pavilion. For starters, Norway likely would not have been made. This would mean no Maelstrom, no Frozen Ever After. For some, that might be a good thing, but I actually enjoy Frozen Ever After. They just need to scrap those projection face animatronics. Those things are awful. Also, Akershus Royal Banquet Hall wouldn't be around, which provides a pretty great dining experience and a cheaper alternative to Cinderella's royal table for dining with the princesses. That being said, perhaps Norway would have eventually come to Epcot anyway, just in a different location. We'll never know. Now, as a huge Disney fan and a huge fan of LEGO, the prospect of the two crossing over would have been truly astonishing to me as a child. I just remember how excited I was for Star Wars weekends at Hollywood Studios, well, MGM Studios back then. Honestly, just imagining the amazing builds that boat ride could have featured has me wishing this pavilion came to pass. Obviously there would be stunning recreations of Danish landmarks, but I bet they would have also included miniature models of park icons such as Cinderella's Castle and Spaceship Earth. But what about Legoland? At the time of the pavilion's planning, there would not have been any Legoland parks in the US yet, with California's park opening later in 1995. In 2011, Orlando welcomed in a new addition to its rogues gallery of theme parks with the opening of its own Legoland. I can't help but wonder if LEGO would have opened a Legoland in Florida if LEGO was already being represented in Walt Disney World. Wouldn't that be some kind of conflict of interest? Although, I guess there could be some brand synergy as Disney Springs still houses a massive LEGO store of its own. Another hypothetical, but if the Denmark Pavilion did open and then Legoland opened, it is possible that LEGO would have just opted to not renew its contract as a sponsor, which would have major implications for that pavilion. In this scenario, all the LEGO theming would have to be removed from the pavilion, I assume, leaving Denmark without the very basis of its entertainment offerings. I can't even imagine how Disney would recover from that. Perhaps they would reimagine it as an expansion to Norway, like a double-sized Norway pavilion? In the end, I have to ask the question, would you have preferred the intended Denmark pavilion over the Norway pavilion we have today? I love the Norway pavilion, and I think Frozen turned the pavilion into one of the most popular parts of the World Showcase. But as a huge fan of LEGO, I have to say that would have been really cool to see. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments. Also, what countries would you like to see represented in Epcot next? I love the idea of adding Greece, and I think South Korea could be very cool too. Let me know your ideas. If you like this video, you can really help out the channel by giving us a like and hitting the subscribe button to keep up with future videos. We also have Instagram and TikTok. You can find those with the link tree in the description. Thanks for watching.